I have committed 2 sins. Therefore, whether I am arrested or executed, I shall program this message to be broadcast when my heart stops beating. However, I want to make one thing clear first. Whoever may have rendered their judgment on me, I am not trying to convince you that their intent is evil. I will not apply the labels of good and evil at all, in fact, because I understand too little about him to begin with. What I am about to tell you is so preposterous, you might even burst into laughter. However, you all have the right to know. To make a long story short, the world as we know it will sink into the sea. Now, speaking of near future for me, assuming that the sensors I built are functioning correctly, there should be a most remarkable earthquake that strikes the entire planet. As a result of that, the sea should rise about 1 meter around the world, rendering some islands uninhabitable. Beaches around the world will be lost for good. If I am wrong in this prediction, feel free to disregard the rest of the message. If this happened, however, you should heed my words very carefully. This particular earthquake is not exactly what I would call a natural phenomenon. In my own way, I only ever hoped for peace. But this was the root of my first sin. I dreamt of a source of endless eternal energy, and in my desire to push the world forward into the future, I flew too close to the sun. Allow me to explain just what it is that is happening to our world. From about 900 years ago to 900 years ago, a period of century, there is a span of history that is completely and entirely blank. We call this the void century because all records from this time were eliminated. The only means to know this lost piece of history is to find a message from the past in the form of poneglyphs scattered across the world and decipher its contents. However, the world government has made it a crime of the highest order to decipher the message of the poneglyphs, and despite being a member of the government myself, I broke this law. This was my second sin. Through the sheer tenacity of a group of excellent archaeologists, I inherited some texts and a number of poneglyphs, which I have deciphered and continued studying to the best of my ability. I regret none of this. History, you see, tells a story. In other words, what I know is an incomplete story of that 100-year void. It would be dishonest to fill the blanks with my own speculation, so I leave you only with the verified truth. The main character of this story was born into a kingdom with an impossibly advanced civilization, 900 years ago. Like the sun god Nika spoken in Elbaf legend, he fought with a body that stretched and contracted. His name was Joyboy, and he was the very first man on this sea to be called a pirate. But as for why he was called a pirate, I have only read from a handful of poneglyphs. But what I found there was the record of a breathtakingly vast war. Joyboy's enemy was the government of the present day. More accurately, it was the precursor to the world government, a provisional army put together by 20 kingdoms known as the Alliance. You might say they had no other choice, so robust was Joyboy's faction. Without knowing the spark that caused the war, I won't say who was right or wrong, I'll simply state that two competing ideologies came head to head. As I mentioned earlier, for its time 900 years ago, the country of Joyboy's birth was a startlingly advanced civilization. And the weapons that were used over the course of this 100-year conflict appear to be impossible to recreate with the latest of modern science. Even I, a humble genius, cannot replicate them. And therein lies the problem. The void century came to close with the defeat of Joyboy, but not before leaving vast, permanent scars of war across the face of the world. The world is made up of a series of islands. Sailing between them is difficult, and may people never experience anything but their own culture at home. But this shared understanding of the world does not necessarily apply to the world of 1,000 years ago because a cataclysm occurred during the void century, causing the world to sink once before. We are currently living on the pieces of a continent that existed long ago. The world of a millennium ago now slumbers unseen at the bottom of the sea. In face, one can assume that in the past, there were a number of continents we know nothing about. If the world were still the same as it was in the past, then the act of erasing 100 years of history would be simply unthinkable and impossible. However, it makes much more sense when you understand that the rise in sea level over that century was 200 meters. As for why the sea level rose so much during that century, it would be natural to assume the work of a sudden natural disaster, but I can state for a fact that this was a man-made disaster. If such a cataclysm were caused by natural forces, then the initial disaster would have spanned several centuries and inflicted slow but continual damage upon the world. But by any measurement, climatology, geology, environmental and atmosphere science, this dramatic shift could not have happened within a single century. So, the cause is something else, and when I detected the rise in worldwide sea levels the other day, I had my answer. I knew the cause and confirmed its existence. The ancient weapons that sank the world into the sea 800 years ago still exist today, and await the moment that they stir once again. In other words, the vast war that arose during the void century never came to an end. Sadly, I owe you all my deepest apologies. But I need you to understand why. I wanted to create the energy that would power the industry of the world to come, and though it is still incomplete, I have at last reached a practical stage of my life's work, the mother flame, a fire that never goes out. It is an energy source that will one day in the future enrich the lives of people all over the world. Unfortunately, one little piece of that flame has been stolen. The fault lies entirely with me. Around 2 weeks after the theft of the flame, the sky over Lulusia shone with a powerful light and the kingdom vanished without a trace, according to reports. After that was when I observed the first signs of worldwide earthquakes. As a scientist, and with utmost pride in its development, I can tell you this: nothing but the mother flame could have created so much energy. The flame that I created was used to activate an ancient weapon. I know nothing about who might have carried this out, but the results speak for themselves. My actions have led, directly or indirectly, to the loss of many human lives. A fact that weighs most deeply upon my soul. I am so sorry. I have inadvertently proven that the man-made disaster that once sank the world is possible again. In the past, there were 3 ancient weapons and Joy Boy attempted to preserve them for the future. Why would he do that for such dangerous things? Have we not sunk far enough? Who is the true evil here, and who fights the good fight? The day will come when all of the answers are laid bare. And I warn you, that moment will happen when we reach the very precipice of the world's drowning. The void century is still ripe with mystery, however there are some who have learned the truth. The king of the pirates' crew. When they learned all of the true history, why did they drift apart without telling anyone? Why didn't they act on it? I realize I have been quite vague on this point, however I can't add anything further other than pure speculation. I have one last message I wish to impart. It is for those of you who are scattered all across the world, those of you who carry the letter D in your name. And their name was nothing of the sorts. That's why. That ceaselessly inherited aspect. We call it a will, and to this who have suffered for this, I can only pray my voice reaches you. Someone once told me that, the voices of the past call out to you. History is written by the victors and word of the vanquished are usually cast into a deep, dark ocean. That being said, their truth can still come to light, if the oppressed carry it on their backs and endure. For my part, I am leaving this to the world. I'm praying that this message gets transmitted safely. I realize it would be foolish to blindly trust in a one-sided account of a 900-year-old battle. But I think we should be able to scrutinize and learn from the past from every perspective possible. I wish I had more time. But there are those who cannot be stopped. 25 years ago, the pirate Roger achieved the unprecedented by circumnavigating the world. I have no doubt they heard the whole thing. They must have heard the voices of the past from purest source possible. I am confident you have come to the same conclusion at this point. And I anticipate that is what will ultimately determine how things transpire in the future. A day of awakening is coming, where all the pressing secrets of the void century will be uncovered. We know the weapon technology that sank the world's continents is still in use. That power is out there. Those with rare and unique racial ancestry are relentlessly persecuted and slaughtered today due to some mysterious quirk of history. There will be a reckoning on the day those answers come. You must be on guard to protect yourself. No matter what happens. I have faith in humanity's capacity for wisdom. I have faith in science. Roger died 25 years ago. And it's been 2 years since Whitebeard's death. A new age is heralded by the passing of old legends. Today there are certain individuals who can't be oppressed. Such individuals are probably the closest to the truth. A coincidence? Or did Roger set this all in motion? Unfortunately, there is no guarantee that it would be found by someone Joy Boy would want. There's no stopping this now. The fate of this world will be decided by whoever finds it. It all depends on who finds